To support us in providing more, subscribe to the channel now. It was 2014, and I was 12 years old when this happened. To give you some background, my mother had moved here from Mexico in the early 90s, so she couldn't find a steady job at the time. The only work she could get was cleaning buildings like clinics and banks. She always took at least one of my siblings or me with her, and we always argued about who should go with her to help. But this time, it was my turn. We had already finished cleaning 3 banks, and the 4th one was always the last on the list. We usually arrived at the 4th bank around midnight, which meant we had to be extra careful of addicts and other dangerous people wandering the streets at night, thinking we might have access to the money machines inside. I was almost done with my tasks, vacuuming the floors and emptying the trash cans, when my mom handed me the keys to the entrance and told me to go outside and clean the windows. I hesitated for a moment because I had never gone outside by myself to clean the windows before, especially not this late at night. But knowing my mom, I couldn't refuse, so I reluctantly agreed. I grabbed the bucket and window wiper and made my way outside. The streets were eerily quiet, and as I stepped out, I suddenly heard a man scream not too far away. I froze in place for a moment, straining my ears to listen, but the scream faded just as quickly as it had come. My heart raced, and fear started creeping in. Still, I knew if I went back inside without finishing the job, my mom wouldn't be pleased. I dipped the window wiper in the water and started cleaning the glass, all while keeping an ear out for any more strange noises. It wasn't long before I heard the scream again, this time closer, coming from my right. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't just run back inside. Well, I grew up in a Hispanic household, and my mom often told us stories of family members who faced danger without fear. I didn't want to be the one who let fear stop me from doing my job. But everything changed when I finally saw the man. He was enormous, with a long beard that reached down to his chest and wild eyes that made it seem like he was high on drugs. I froze in my tracks, hoping he wouldn't notice me, but he did. His mouth opened wider than I thought humanly possible, and he let out a scream so loud it felt like it could shatter the windows I was cleaning. Have you ever seen the movie Veronica? If you remember the scene where Veronica screams after playing with the Ouija board, that's exactly what his scream sounded like. In a panic, I fumbled through my pockets, desperately trying to find the keys to open the door. Why didn't my mom just give me one key instead of this massive key ring? The man was getting closer and was now only about 15 feet away when I finally managed to unlock the door. I grabbed my things and rushed inside. Just as I was about to close the door, the man grabbed the handle and tried to force it open. Now, I wasn't into video games like most kids my age, but I did enjoy lifting weights. I slammed my foot against the door and pulled with all my strength, finally managing to shut it. The man glared at me with eyes filled with malice and let out one last scream before disappearing into the night. I went back inside, still trembling, and somehow my mom hadn't heard any of it because she was busy cleaning the toilets. I didn't tell her what had happened because I was still in shock. We finally finished our work, and as we were leaving, my mom noticed the handprints on the glass door where the man had tried to pry it open. She casually remarked that I hadn't done a good job cleaning the windows, not realizing what had just happened. Since that night, I've never gone outside to clean the windows again. Even now, when we occasionally pass by that bank, I can still hear the angry screams of that man in my mind. It was truly one of the most terrifying moments of my life, and I'll never forget it. It was very late one night where we were living at the time, and the night was quite calm. My mom, my two younger sisters, who I'll refer to as V and A, and I were sitting in the back of our family car. We had just finished closing our family restaurant, and everyone was exhausted after a long day of work. But despite the fatigue, there was still something we needed to do before heading home. At this point in my life, I was 13 years old. My sister V was 11, and my youngest sister A was only 7. That day, I had some library books that we had borrowed, and they needed to be returned. This might seem like an ordinary task, but things felt different that night because it was so late and the town was almost deserted, especially with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which had just begun to make its presence felt worldwide. As we drove toward the library, the streets were quiet, except for some faint streetlights here and there. When we approached the library entrance, we noticed a strange man standing near the door. His appearance was unsettling. He was standing in the shadows, leaning against the wall of the library, as if waiting for something or someone. I decided I needed to quickly return the books because I knew my mom wouldn't want to linger for too long, especially given the tense atmosphere. I grabbed the bag of books and stepped out of the car, heading toward the library where they had drop-off boxes for returning books after hours. The library was, of course, closed at this late hour, so these boxes were the only way to return the books. But when I got close enough, I realized everything was locked, the doors and the drop-off boxes. Disappointed, I knew there was no point in waiting any longer. What caught my attention even more was that the man had quietly moved toward the car. I had left the car door open when I stepped out, and I hadn't noticed that this man had started slowly making his way toward the open door. When I saw this, I quickly hurried back to the car and told my mom in Chinese that the drop-off boxes were locked and I couldn't return the books. At this point, things took a strange and unsettling turn. Just as I neared the car, the man began talking to my mom. He was asking her for money. His expression was odd and disturbing, and the way he looked at us was uncomfortable. But my mom handled it calmly and smartly. She pretended not to understand what he was saying, responding to him in Chinese. This was her way of avoiding further interaction with this strange man. In that moment, I could feel the tension rising within me. As soon as I got back into the car, my mom quickly shut the door and pressed the lock button. Her reaction was impressive, not taking any risks by leaving the door open with this strange person standing so close to the car. His gaze was eerie and unsettling, and I felt my heart race as the car started to move away slowly from him. As we drove off, I kept watching him in the rearview mirror. The man remained standing there, not moving or attempting to follow us, but he continued to stare at the car as we drove away. There was something mysterious and frightening about that look, as if there was something going on in his mind that we couldn't comprehend. Although the situation ended quickly and nothing serious happened, the feeling that lingered within me, and especially my mom, was deeply unsettling. It wasn't just about the man asking for money, but the fact that we were in an isolated place, very late at night, and we weren't alone. My two younger sisters were in the back seat, and all we could think about was keeping ourselves safe. After driving far enough from the library, things calmed down a bit. My mom finally spoke to us about how scared she had been in that moment. She said she felt like she wasn't able to protect us enough in that situation, and that it was important for us all to know how to defend ourselves in such circumstances. That's when she decided that once the pandemic was over, she would enroll us in self-defense classes, maybe taekwondo or something similar. Since that day, even though we haven't started the self-defense lessons yet due to the pandemic, I've become much more aware of my surroundings, especially late at night. I've started to pay more attention to where I go, and I'm cautious of the people who approach me, because that night served as a reminder that danger can come at any moment, even in places that seem familiar and safe. When I was 10 years old, I lived with my mom and my older brother, who was 12 at the time, in a small one-story house. We three lived in quiet and peace in this simple home, and nothing unusual had ever happened during our time there, except for one strange incident that still raises questions for me even after more than a decade. During that period, I had no strange experiences, and I don't remember ever feeling anything out of the ordinary or supernatural. We were living a very normal life, and there was no reason to think about ghosts or bizarre phenomena. The house was small, my mother's bedroom was next to mine, and my brother slept in the basement where his room was at that time. One of the things I loved about my room was the beaded curtain that hung at the entrance of my bedroom door. The curtain was made up of small beads that made a distinctive sound when someone moved through them, making it very easy to hear anyone entering or exiting my room due to that clear sound. I loved this curtain and considered it a part of my childhood decor, but it would soon become an important part of the incident I will recount. One night, I suddenly woke up at around 3 in the morning. It was strange because I usually sleep very soundly, but that night was different. I had been wearing my earbuds before sleeping, and as I always did, I rolled them up and placed them on the wall-mounted shelf beside my bed when I woke up. The house was completely quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen and the sound of a ticking clock somewhere in the background. After placing my earbuds aside, I started tossing and turning in bed, trying to find a comfortable position to fall back asleep. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise coming from either the kitchen or the living room. It sounded like a heavy cardboard box had fallen to the floor, and it was loud enough to wake me up completely. I sat up in bed, fully alert, trying to understand what had happened. The first thing I thought was that my mom might have gotten up to grab a glass of water and accidentally dropped something. However, from my bed, I could see her bedroom door clearly, and it was shut tight. This meant she hadn't left her room and was still asleep. I considered my brother. Perhaps he was the one who made the noise, but I didn't hear any footsteps after that. There was no sound of glass being placed on the counter or the fridge door closing. Our house was very small, and I would have heard any movement clearly. I tried to calm myself down and decided that something must have fallen on its own because it was placed at an angle and finally gave way. I tried to lie back down, but not even 15 seconds later, I heard the beads of my curtain move abruptly, as if someone had slapped them. I jolted upright and looked toward my bedroom door, but to my surprise, the beads were completely still. I sat there, dumbfounded, staring at the unmoving beads that I had just heard. What the hell? I started to think that I must be losing my mind, hearing things because of adrenaline or fatigue. So, I lay back down, this time facing my door, my eyes wide open from paranoia. As I mentioned, I was only 10 years old, and at this point, I was very scared. My mind was racing with thoughts of monsters, ghosts, or maybe even an intruder. But not even 30 seconds later, I heard loud, heavy footsteps running from the basement. It was as if someone was wearing heavy boots and running around. We were doing some renovations in the basement at that time, so the floors were made of creaky plywood subflooring, which were quite loud if you walked on them, let alone ran on them. I sat up to listen more closely, but by the time I had finished sitting up, the running had stopped. Just a few seconds later, I heard the running again, a second time. All I could think was, why is my brother running around in the basement at 3 a.m? My brother has Asperger's, which means he has routines and behaves in very specific, repetitive ways. He never runs, not even during the day, let alone at 3 a.m. He also has a condition where if he sweats, he breaks out in hives, which is why he never runs. I realized that it couldn't be my brother. I tried not to think the worst, like a break-in or fears of my entire family being in danger. I stayed calm and listened intently for several minutes. I would have clearly heard someone walking or running in the basement because of the small size of our house and the creaky subflooring, but I didn't hear anything else after that. I desperately wanted to call for my mom or run to her room, but I was so scared I didn't dare move or make a sound. If it was an intruder, they most likely just wanted to steal some things, and I didn't want to give them any reason to come upstairs and potentially harm my mom. She was a single mother with 2 young kids and no means of protection. Self-defense weapons are illegal in my country. I lay back down very quietly, in fear. It took me hours to fall back asleep. When I woke up, the sun was shining through my window. My mom's door was open, and I could hear her and my brother talking in the kitchen, with cartoons playing in the living room. I quickly got up and went straight to the kitchen. I wanted to ask them if they had heard anything strange during the night. I expected a definite yes, but both of them said they hadn't. I asked if either of them had found anything placed strangely or on the floor in the kitchen or living room, thinking maybe something had fallen during the night. Again, they both said no. I then asked if either of them had gotten up during the night for any reason, and once again they looked at me strangely and said no. My heart dropped. I couldn't believe that neither one of them had caused the noises. Just to confirm, I asked my brother directly, "So, you weren't running around in the basement last night?" No, I wasn't," he answered, confused. Neither my mom nor my brother had ever sleepwalked in their lives. My brother wasn't interested in getting up, so he just went downstairs to play on his computer. My mom, however, was concerned, so I told her everything I had heard the night before. We checked the front door, which was locked, and all the windows, which were closed, locked, and undamaged. Nothing was stolen. I still have no idea what happened that night. No one in my family ever plays pranks, and I can't think of any reason why they would lose a good night's sleep just to scare me with random noises. Besides, I didn't hear any sounds of walking or anyone returning to their rooms after the noises. And how would they have made the sound of my beads moving without actually moving them? If you guys have any ideas, I'd love to hear them. I thought maybe it could have been a very vivid and realistic nightmare until I found my earbuds neatly rolled up on my wall-mounted shelf beside my bed. The exact same spot and position I had placed them when I woke up at 3 in the morning. So yeah, I don't think it was a nightmare. Whatever it was one creepy experience. In the summer of 2021, I was enjoying beautiful moments in California, where the summer weather was wonderful. I was out with my fiancée, running errands and soaking up the sunny atmosphere. While we were out, we realized we needed a few ingredients for dinner, so we headed to the nearby Trader Joe's store. When we arrived, I parked my car in the parking lot and we got out. At that moment, I noticed another car pulling in next to mine. I looked back to see a black man, probably in his late 50s, with an angry expression on his face. I was about to go into the store, but something in his demeanor made me feel tense. I approached the car to see what he wanted. It was still daylight, around 7 p.m., and I thought we were in a safe place in front of the store. I didn't expect anything strange to happen. As I walked closer, I saw the man smoking a cigarette and glaring at me menacingly. He said in a low, tense voice, "Thank you for not ignoring me." It was clear he was angry, but I tried to stay calm. I asked, "What's up, man?" The man took another drag from his cigarette, and when I looked at his hand, I noticed his knuckles were bleeding. It seemed he had been in a fight, and for some reason, I felt like I could be dragged into this situation. "I'm really pissed off," he said, as if I couldn't already tell. "My daughter just got the expletive beaten out of her, and I'm trying to get to her." I didn't know how to respond, so I simply said, "Oh wow, I'm really sorry to hear that." Then he locked eyes with me again and said, "Yeah, so I need some money." He growled again, "I'm not a bum. I'm not a bad guy. I just need money to get to my daughter, and you're going to help me." I couldn't help but look down and noticed he kept his hand under the seat. I had seen this move in movies and TV shows. There was a high chance this man either had a gun or another weapon, and I was panicking inside. I only said, "Yeah, man, sure, let me go inside and get some cash." You might call me an idiot for that, but I was trying to think of a way out without provoking this unstable guy. My fiancée looked at me with concern and asked what was going on. As I walked back to the front of my car, I didn't answer her because I was contemplating what might happen if we went into the store. He had parked right next to my car and was still staring at us. I knew I had one chance to make a move. I told my fiancée to get in the car and that I'd explain later. As I got into the driver's seat, the man looked at me again. "You gonna get me some money?" he demanded. I nodded my head. "Yeah, man. Just wait here and I'll be right back." Thank God he believed my story and didn't follow us. I got in the car and immediately drove away. My fiancée looked over at me again and asked what was going on. I told her what happened and that we needed to go to a different Trader Joe's for our groceries. She was completely understanding and supportive. I have a history of severe anxiety, and I was completely caught off guard by that situation. Needless to say, I took multiple back roads to the Trader Joe's in our neighborhood. I was on edge for the rest of the night and paranoid about the man following us home or finding my car somehow. Let this be a lesson to all of you out there. I don't care how big and tough you think you are, never ever approach a stranger's car. I'm a 6'tall, muscular guy, and this was terrifying even for me. It's not about your man card or your ego when your safety or the safety of the people around you is in question. Be smart and stay away from situations like that. It's just not worth the trouble that comes with it. It was one summer night in 2021 in California when my parents decided to take me out for a little trip. I was around 15 years old, and the weather was delightful, which made me excited to get out. We needed a few things for dinner that evening, so we stopped by a local Quick Trip to grab gas, drinks, and some cigarettes for my mom, as usual. When we arrived at the station, my dad went inside the store to gather what he needed, while my mom sat in the front passenger seat. I chose to stay in the back, enjoying some music. As I waited, I started to notice something unusual. There was a strange man, clearly homeless, standing by the payphone near our car. He appeared to be in his mid to late 30s with a look of anger or displeasure on his face. He was talking on the phone, but the unsettling part was that he never took his eyes off me or my mom. Those piercing looks made me feel very uncomfortable. The memory is still vivid in my mind, especially with the song playing in the background, Never There by Cake. I was listening to it and felt a tension in the air. I couldn't ignore those stares, so I decided to ask my mom about it. I said, "Did you notice the guy staring at us?" She calmly replied, "Yeah, just ignore it." Not long after, my dad came out of the store. As he opened the car door and got in, the doors automatically locked. I was grateful for that feature because what happened next was straight out of a nightmare. My dad started the engine, and within about 5 to 10 seconds, we began to back out of the parking space. Suddenly, I saw that man approaching our car, heading towards the rear driver's side. He was holding something in his hand, wrapped in what looked like a towel or cloth, trying to conceal it behind his back. He grabbed the door handle on the rear driver's side as if he expected it to open for him. But of course, it was locked. He just stared at us and mouthed, "Sorry, sorry," while waving his free hand, the other still hidden behind his back. Then he tried to open the car door again, seemingly thinking we would unlock it for him after his first attempt. But we didn't. It was obvious that he wasn't sober, and his intentions felt dark. I truly believed he wanted to carjack us or potentially hurt my mom, maybe even me. We quickly drove away, dialing the police as we left the parking lot. I watched as he ran toward a nearby mailbox, hiding whatever he had concealed behind his back. I don't know what that man had planned or what his issue was, but I really hope he got the help he needed. That experience was shocking, and I can't seem to forget it. It taught me an important lesson. I should always be cautious and aware of what's happening around me.